championship game, the fact that existing franchises, some of whom had great concern, will remain where they are, expansion, 2 new franchises with an announcement of a policy for further expansion as soon as we evaluate the absorption of 4 teams within 2 or 3 years, Atlanta, Miami in '66. The NFL will definitely name a team for 1967. They're 60 for this interim period. The AFL will name a team for '67 or possibly '68. As I understand it, they're not quite certain, but no later than '68. I think that the interleague preseason games can be very attractive. We're going to have at least 1 for each club. I think these are all strongly in the public interest.
Commissioner, doesn't a merger like this show football to be a big business rather than a sport?
I don't see that increasing the size of a professional football league. All right. The question was that doesn't a merger, I'm using the wording of the questioner, doesn't a merger of this type indicate that professional football is big business? We feel that football is a sport with certain business aspects, but I don't see that the fact that we've enlarged by 1970 to some 26 teams makes it any more of a business really than when it was enlarged from 12 to 14 and then 15. We simply follow through with the announced plan and go no further than that, by 70 there would be 26 teams. Fortunately, this is one issue we were able to get unanimous consent on we would take up in 1969, because that could be a long meeting. But it's completely open on realignment. Absolutely not, no.
Whose request was it that no teams be moved from where they are at present? The AFL asked that or the NFL?
It was a joint feeling that it was in the public interest to do it that way.
Pete, this is a piece. Who does this panel think won the war? Who won the war?
I feel that's a league matter.
I think it's beneficial to both, frankly, and very beneficial to the fans all around the country. I don't want to sound corny on that, but when you look at all aspects of this with the championship game, I think this is personally, I think it'll be one of the biggest sporting events of the year, every year in America.
We'll have Tex finish the other part of that, if you will.
Well, speaking to...
What really makes it better football?
Going to have on your championship game?
Pardon me just a moment.
What effect is this going to have on your...
Yes, we will.
And then play the other game?
Yes.
What effect is this merger going to have on your future network TV contracts?
It's our intention to have both the NFL and the AFL fulfill their present contractual commitments, and then during the 4 years, no discussions have been held with the networks, but hopefully an arrangement can be made to continue similar exposure to that we now have, and using 2 networks.
If there is going to be a championship game after this coming season, are you going to put TV rights for it up to the highest bidder?
Mechanics, none of this has been worked out yet. This is something that we're going to have a 2 or 3 man group representing the NFL, a 2 or 3 man group representing the AFL, and I will sit with them as soon as time permits, and we'll start getting into some of these mechanics.
But there will be a championship game after this season between both league champions,
That is what this plan calls for.
and it will be televised on some network.
I will have to assume it will.
Well, then a 4 year transition period, right?
For my part, I think that all of us that I've been associated with felt that we would come out of it in our 26-team concept a much stronger organization and a much greater sport than we have been as 2 separate entities.
Due to the fact that the Jets had built up 60,000 fans without entering the Giants, what do you think of your league making the Jets pay an indemnity to the Giants to exist in the same city? Well, any indemnity, if that's the term to use, was paid as a league and not as an individual team. And let me say, I can speak for 9 clubs in this case. It's very, very difficult to get 9 people to agree. I'm sure Tex and Pete would say it's very difficult to get 15 people to agree. Almost every point that was discussed had some club owner who was not in favor of it. But basically the decision we made, and I'm sure this is true of the NFL also, the decision we made was made as a league, not as individual clubs, because every club would look at different questions differently. Yes.
When your negotiating committee was formed, I believe...
Bandwidth does not follow the legal maneuvers of league mergers?
Fine, if you'd hand me a press release, I'll enumerate them. I think a number of them are right on the...
We hold that up so we can report that to the after he votes himself.
Of equality of team competition throughout the expanded league. This, of course, is the basis on which fan interest in professional football depends. An increase in the number of active playing jobs for veterans and graduating collegians, probably not of great interest to the general public, but certainly to the football players. In other words,
Football League has to pay $18 million to the NFL over a 20-year period?
yes, there are 2 things involved. One, a portion of this money goes to the New York Giants and the San Francisco 49ers for relinquishing certain guarantees due them through the Constitution and bylaws of the NFL. The other reason, NFL club presidents felt that this action would increase the value of AFL franchises. They felt it was justified, and apparently the American Football League agreed.
Who will get the $18 million?
A portion of the total payment money will go to the 49ers and Giants. Other money will be distributed to the existing clubs of the NFL.
Do the club owners of the other NFL clubs, they will get that money for their treasury?
Some income will go to other clubs of the NFL, as well as a portion of the total payment going to the 49ers and Giants.
Why is it worth $18 million, though? That seems like a very steep price.
Well, I think I gave you the thinking of the NFL club presidents and the fact that the AFL club presidents concurred or agreed.
Commissioner, will a president of the NFL be chosen?
There's no timetable. These are mechanics that have to be worked out, and in the last few hectic days, there just is a number of things that must be resolved, and all I can say is that in due course.
Is it fair to say, Commissioner, that the NFL was forced into this merger by the fact that so many of its players had expressed a willingness to play out their options in the NFL and then go to the AFL?
I think that the statement bears on that. If you're speaking of recent press stories concerning players, I would like to refer you to the statement and to say to you, as I believe that Mr. Hunt and Mr. Schramm will, that there were intensive negotiations pre-Gogolak, pre-Gabriel, pre-Brody.
Well, does this mean an end to the talent war, Commissioner? In other words, this did precipitate the merger, the fact that you were having trouble keeping players from jumping and the high bonuses the 2 leagues were being forced to pay by the competition. Isn't that what really caused the merger?
No, I think that it has been discussed for several years. There's never been a plan that you could get all members of each league to agree upon. However, this is something that appeared that it would bring about a greater pro football, a greater league, and a great deal of time was spent on it, and I think that was the conclusion that was reached. We feel that it's inherent in the statement and in the decisions reached. You'll find, or certainly assume, I would hope, that a number of concessions were made. A number of concessions were made by people in the NFL and people in the AFL in their views, in attempting to make this as much in the public interest as possible.
But isn't it true, Commissioner, that for the last 5 or 6 years, the NFL has in effect been pretending that the AFL doesn't exist?
I think that recruiting measures and other steps taken by the National Football League over the last 4 or 5 years clearly indicated they did know the American Football League existed.
What is Al Davis going to do? Has he been offered the president of the presidency of the American League?
I believe that's a question for Lamar Hunt, and I'll ask him to answer it.
Mr. Hunt, what about Al Davis? Is he? And by the way, I'm not still working for you. Mr. Hunt, is Al Davis going to be president of the American League? Has the job been offered to him?
Well, I think the title that you mentioned is probably something I should dwell on first. Al Davis, it's our hope that he will stay as commissioner of the American Football League. Now, I would prefer to let Al answer it for himself, and I think there has been some publicity to the effect that he felt that he might possibly step out, but I would prefer to let Al answer that for himself.
Mr. Hunt, do you feel that you settled whatever antitrust aspects there may be in this?
Well, I'll say this. In a consideration of the realignment of the teams, we have looked at we've had legal advice, and personally, the legal advice we have is that the realignment is certainly not a risk that is not warranted. I may not have said that properly. I probably should more relate it to the sports bill and the passage of this bill, or the imminent passage, as we hope. We think this will clarify the situation if the water is muddy.
Are you
speak on that?
concerned, sir, that the
Yes.
essential...
Let me just a moment. I'd like to speak on that because I have had meetings yesterday and today with Senator Hart, head of the Senate Judiciary Committee, and Congressman Seller, head of the House Judiciary Committee. I merely informed them of our announcement, filled them in on our plans. We feel that the sports bill that passed, the Hart bill that passed the Senate, which is now in the House Committee, with proper testimony in a House hearing, and if passed by the House this session, would remove any problem areas. Beyond that, we would only say, should the bill not pass Congress, become law, that we would be guided by our legal counsel.
Peter, to get back to specifics, is it true or is it not true the American Football League did indeed in recent weeks sign a number of National Football League players?
I can say that I think it might be best to turn that to Mr. Hunt because I'm not conversant on the subject yet.
You know that it's true.
No, I do not know that it's true.
All right,
I read
Lamar,
this-
you know that it's true. You answer it.
Howard, I know of one, and I only know of it through the newspaper, and that's
Gabriel.
the publicity on Roman Gabriel. I don't know of any others.
That's the only one I know of through the press.
What do you know, Lamar, about Mike Ditka of the Chicago Bears?
I don't.
You know nothing about
No, I know he's great.
What if I told you that one of your owners has publicly admitted that Mike Ditka of the Bears did sign with an American Football League team, using him as just one illustration?
Well, my answer would be the same. I'm not aware of it if it has happened.
You've been negotiating for your league without an awareness of what your league was doing? Is that what you're telling us?
Well, I believe I answered the question, Howard. I don't mean to be abrupt, but I would have to say, stay with
It's
my
not a
answer.
question of being abrupt, Lamar. It's a question of being evasive at a time when the people of this country are entitled to know the truth.
Commissioner, is it fair to say that this merger is going to mean a reduction in player salaries and player bonuses because the competition has been, in effect, eliminated?
I think that I might best answer that, Bob, by saying that this was an assumption drawn in 1950 when three of the All-American Conference teams came into the National Football League, and it did not mean a decline in salaries. I would have to assume that it would mean a decline in time, certainly, if not some effect immediately on the rookie signing bonuses. I do not see that salaries, however, will basically decline.
But bonuses will, you say?
I would anticipate that bonuses would to some degree, certainly in time, if not the first year.
And the players are going to be the big losers.
Ed,
Could you first give us the date that these negotiations started, the exact date?
I'd like to have Tex Schramm answer that because he has a better chronology on it.
In our league, it started in early March, and the first meeting that Lamar and I had was, I believe, the first week of April.
This year?
Yes, this year.
I want to get back to this.
Wait a minute, let's finish this one. Yes, what about the NFL? What's they start the negotiations?
This is Tex Schramm, president of the Dallas Cowboys, Ed.
Pete,
Yes.
will the Gogolak deal stand?
That's what I want.
Gogolak signed with the New York Giants. The contract was submitted to the NFL office. There were 10 days in which the contract could have been disapproved. Otherwise, it was binding upon initial signing. It was not disapproved.
It's not involved in this.
It is not.
All right, what happens to the players that the AFL signed who are in the NFL? Because they did sign. What happens to those players?
Well, I can only, in answer your question, and I think that Lamar gave you a truthful answer as well, Howard, the only player that I've heard of, and this was largely press reports and talking to the Rams, was the Roman Gabriel report. Now, if you say others are signed, I can only say that in my new role, it would just be my responsibility to look into the facts if they were signed.
All right, if I
and
give